Welcome to California in Focus. I'm Keegan Kernodle. Joining me is our LA-based reporter, Kenneth Shrub. And today we're talking about a story we've touched on in the past, but Trump has weighed in on the possibility of low-income housing in the Pacific Palisades. Kenneth, can you tell us more about this?
Trump condemned the possibility of building low-income housing in the Pacific Palisades, while also bringing up the slow issuance of permits by the city of Los Angeles for rebuilding in the fire-destroyed community. Let me just quickly read what the president said at the press conference. He said, "You see what's happening now? They didn't get their permits. This is among the most beautiful areas, was, in the country. Now they're talking about putting low-income housing there. Can you believe this?" This does reflect some of our earlier reporting. The Center Square was the first to report that the city of Los Angeles has this ordinance that would require all rent-protected units destroyed in the fire or just any way to be replaced with low-income housing if they're in a so-called higher opportunity area. Opportunity areas are on this state map. This requirement would apply to anywhere with a moderate or high opportunity rating. Mayor Karen Bass, though, later actually signed an executive order as a result of this story that did create an exemption for the January wildfires. She'd have to create another exemption from future fires if people were to get upset about that and demand such a change. The governor also, as a result of the story, signed an exemption from the state's replacement requirement for low-income housing for the city of Los Angeles. Again, and future fires, you'd have to sign a new exemption. Also, this only applied to the city of Los Angeles. The January fires weren't just in the city of Los Angeles. There was also the Eaton fire in some of the unincorporated parts of LA County, which includes the community of Altadena. So Altadena has no city government. The fire did burn parts of Sierra Madre and Pasadena. So the state requirement, a little different from the city requirement, is still in effect there. But it does highlight this growing discussion about, well, what are the low-income housing requirements? If not requirements, what kind of projects are going to be financed? What even is affordable housing? Affordable housing sounds like it's housing that people can't afford, but that's actually a government term for income-restricted, rent-limited housing. So if you make too much money, you're not allowed to rent these units. If you get into one of these units, your rent is capped. So a lot of people want to get into these units, but the general economic analysis has found these requirements, they're paid for by someone, and it means that the developer of these buildings, if these developers have to build affordable units as part of their agreement with the city to get approval for their structure, they're using state laws that let them build more units and include in return for having some more of these affordable units. Those costs are passed on to everyone else in the building, or also result in fewer total units being constructed. So this is generally considered by economists to be a bad policy. Even housing experts are now starting to turn against the policy, even the more progressive experts that once supported these things. This also ties into how last month Governor Newsom announced $101 million in funding for, and this is a quote from his release and his department's notice of funding for multifamily low-income housing development, end quote, as a rebuilding measure that will, quote, contribute to a more equitable and resilient Los Angeles. So when you looked into this funding notice, it says that there's priority for projects with, quote, geographic proximity to the fire perimeters of the Eaton, Hughes, and Palisades fires. We got into a bit of a disagreement with the governor about this story. The disagreement with the governor being that he is not changing state laws or is for building this multifamily low-income housing fund in Los Angeles. I did just use the governor's own words and his own department's words, so not really clear what they were clearing up with that. And the Center Square did have to respond to that. We did stand by our reporting. So in light of the president's comments, we did reach out to the local Los Angeles City Council member who represents the Pacific Palisades. And her staff told us, well, look, the executive orders that were signed by the mayor and the governor, they end the replacement requirement. So that at least is out of the way for now. Whatever happens moving forward with county or other project funding or state funding, that's an entirely separate issue, but at least that replacement requirement is sort of put to rest for now.
So in his press conference, Trump said something about the speed at which these permits were coming out. Can you tell me more about that as well?
Right. So Mayor Bass did issue a rebuilding update at the end of July. So about 7 months after the fire, she said nearly 300 rebuilding plans have been approved by the city. I take that as meaning somewhere more than 200 and somewhere less than 300. That's really not a lot when you consider how many structures were destroyed. The Palisades fire, one of several fires in the area, it destroyed 6,837 structures. So 300 rebuilding plans have been approved. 6,837 structures were destroyed. Permitting is taking quite a long time.
Well, thank you, Kenneth, for reporting on this. Listeners can keep up with this and more at thecentersquare.com. And thank you for joining another episode of California in Focus.